I'm Moritz Wagner. I'm the head of design at Mimimi Games. So I'm responsible for, the game design department, level design department, and these sort of things.
Thank you for being here with us today. We are talking about the final chapter, the finale of the Season Pass DLC on Desperados 3 today, which this is Money for the Vultures, once more with feeling, taking players back to a sort of iconic place in the franchise history. Can you start by telling us about how Once More with Feeling came into sort of its foundations?
Yeah, so very early on when we started working on the DLCs, we decided that we wanted to bring back one of the iconic Desperados locations for the people who played the old games, to give them something to reminisce about and be like, oh man, that's awesome. And pretty early the decision was made that it's going to be the Eagle's Nest, which is where the gang encounters, it belongs to Sanchez, one of the favorite characters of many people in the first game, and they encounter him there. And so it's a very unique level, and it also has a very unique layout and look. It is this sort of beautiful Pueblo style thing with the layered buildings, so it's very unique. And they also put that into Desperados 2 because people enjoyed it as much, I think. And so it was clear for us that we wanted to do that mission. It's one of the most iconics. And then we started building the rest of the whole DLC saga basically around the idea of going back to that one mission in the end.
So that is to say that, like, sort of Eagle's Nest came first, and then you started building Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 leading up to this Chapter 3.
Yeah, the idea basically. We knew we wanted to take Eagle's Nest. We weren't sure that it would be the last mission that developed while we were developing the storyline, and then we thought, okay, it should probably be the last one because that's the coolest location, I guess, for many people. So that's how we did it in a way. But yeah, I think overall it was clear pretty early that we wanted it to be the grand finale of Desperados 3.
And it's a really interesting thing too, because Desperados 3 is a prequel to the games, to the previous games, but it also comes years after the last Desperados game. What was it like both recreating sort of a previous state of this and also building it out for like a 2020 game?
That is, it was very weird. Funnily, actually, when we started working on the main game for Desperados, we wanted to create the feeling, like see if we can create the feeling of the old game. And what we decided was that we wanted to do a replica, basically, of the Eagle's Nest, because even back then, for us, it was a very iconic mission. And we just did that, to compare the scales and stuff like that, basic things you want to get right. And so we very early on had a version of that final small part, the Eagle's Nest itself, that we could always look at. So it has been part of that process of reinventing Desperados from very early on. And it is a very difficult thing to do, basically, because you always have to get certain things right. You have to get the feeling right. You have to get certain scales right to make it feel the same way. But we also knew that if we wanted to make a mission out of this, it needed to be much, much bigger than it is in the original games. Because in the original games, it's very small, if you look at it from our point of view and mechanics. And if it's the finale of a big DLC, you want to spend like maybe 2 hours there in our games. So we needed to really boost the thing, and we added a lot to that mission. So the first part is it's completely new, basically. It's what we imagined would be around that place that you see in the first game.
And that brings up an interesting point, because like one of the I would say most awesome features of Desperados 3 has been like you have these sprawling levels. Like every single level is like a full chapter of gameplay. Like from the bridge with like the waterfall going over the mountain and the rainbow, like that was gorgeous to me. And then you've got the sprawling swamp where you meet Isabella, and then you've got this, which is like the grand finale. Like, how do you improve upon like what you've already done with like previous levels in this game to make something so vast and amazing as sort of Eagle's Nest?
It's usually a very long progress. process. Sorry. The good thing about Eagles, or the state we were in when we were making the DLC, is that we already had a lot of assets. We had the mechanics nailed down. We knew how the game was going to work, so we could focus entirely on building the level and making it as cool as we wanted to. There were no big distractions. There were no question marks about how we're going to tell the story. And something that we learned as well regarding the is how to tell a story better in our type of game. It's a very simple story through other DLCs, but I think it works very well, and it's very fun to explore. And that's because the game sort of knows what it is at that point, and you can write a story for that. So taking these things in, it still takes a very long time. You start building a layout, you make sketches at first, and then you're like, okay, how could this work? The challenge was to find out what could be around this place, and it's in the desert. So we were okay, we want to add some type of desert gameplay to this. How would that look in our game? So we had level designers do some prototypes where they would experiment with vast spaces and sand footprint gameplay in these vast spaces to see where that would lead us. And so we came up with different concepts, and we realized, okay, we want to put one of these desert gameplay parts here, another one right here. And then we have to figure out where to put the characters and create an interesting mission structure, basically. And in this case, the requirement that we had for this to work was rather high, because the story, like the setup is very weird in this mission. You start playing as only Cooper, which is something that almost never happens in the main game. But we now felt confident that we could do that in a big mission as well. And then the story evolves around very fun things that led to this weird setup you're in, with Hector, one of the main characters, having a plan that went, well, Cooper would say it went horribly wrong. Hector would insist that it didn't go wrong at all and everything is going just as planned. But this is sort of the fun thing that developed. It wasn't clear from the beginning that we wanted to do this. We started developing this while making the level, coming up with these ideas, and then you come up with these new, okay, how is this area going to look like if we have this concept? What went wrong with the plan when Kate tried to do something? What went wrong when Isabel tried to do something? So you need to free them in the mission and stuff like that. It builds.
I do gotta ask, and speaking on that, like moving into mechanics, we do have a lot of verticality here because it is like it's a city built into a mountainside. So you've got like your trapdoors that sort of lead up to taller buildings and the scalable areas. But you've also got the cannon, which is just fantastic looking. What was it like putting together that particular? Like we've seen some of these other things, but this is kind of the first time we've seen something as bombastic as the cannon in this game.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact process. We were like, okay, we want to blow up that gate. Basically, that was something we needed to sort of make the mission split into two parts. So we have the first part, and then we enable the Eagle's Nest, and it's sort of a big, it's a big reveal. People know if they watch the marketing stuff, but it's a reveal inside the mission. We're like, okay, there's something cool happening, and so we thought about how can we make this cool. And we figured, yeah, well, I mean, cannons are cool, and blowing stuff up is cool, so why not use a cannon to shoot it open? Then our VFX artist put quite some time into making it look good. There's actually a lot of. We didn't have much budget for new mechanics in the DLC because the programmers had to do other stuff. They had to focus on making the whole thing work in the game, actually, just the whole DLC thing. So the fun thing is that you carry a box of cannonballs with Hector to load the cannon. And those cannonballs are actually, they're a corpse with a different model. So it's sort of hacky in a way because the only way we can pick up objects is corpses of guards. So the cannonballs are actually a corpse that has a cannonball model that you carry along.
That's excellent. Like it's really interesting to hear about the workarounds that come through, and when you're putting a game like this, even just like a level like this together. I do want to, as a two-parter, say thank you for that quick save system, because this game can be very difficult, but that quick save system sort of gives a lot of cushion for getting through these levels. I do gotta ask, because you mentioned like sort of a 2-hour playtime on this level alone. Like for the normal player, how often do you think they need to save or and quit and reload to maybe get the progress of this level right?
It's hard. Well, first, the quick save, yeah, it's good that you like it. It's an integral part of the game. We realized that pretty early that this is the core feature of this whole thing. Otherwise, it would be very unplayable, I think. And well, for this particular level, it's hard to say because we didn't have much playtesting. If I look into the other levels that we did and the stats that I have for that, it's widely different. But the average player usually takes about, well, between 30 and 70 saves, depending on the mission, or loads, I think. It's loads, yeah. So it would probably be in the latter part, I guess. It's like a 50, 60 saves is something I would deem normal for that type of mission. It's long. It's not brutally hard. There are harder missions, I think, in the main game. So it's probably not the biggest amount of saves.
That does bring up an interesting point, because that is one of the challenges for levels in the main game, is like quick saving as minimally as possible. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say would be like the challenge meter on getting that challenge done in this particular level?
I would say Eagle's Nest is an 8, 7 to 8 maybe. I think we have missions that have areas that are a lot harder to clear, and Eagle's Nest, I think it's more of a fun mission where you can play it in different ways, and this means that we as designers give away control, and that usually means that it can be easy, it can be hard, depending on what you're doing. In this particular mission, you are able to free certain characters. So if you free only one of the two characters, the mission becomes harder in the end. If you free both of them, it's easier in the second part. If you decide to free none of them, which is actually possible because we usually build stuff around that sort of thing, and you try to go for the challenge in that level, that is only free the character in the end and play with Cooper only in the beginning, which is very hard, then it gets a 10, I guess, in difficulty ratings. So it's always a little up to the player on how comfortable they feel and how hard they want to, well, quick save and quick load.
And that is something that's been kind of also a core experience of Desperados 3, is that you have these different ways that you can go about levels. Like stealthy or loud has been sort of the foundational motif of every level in this game. Can you talk a little bit more about like sort of the stealthy or loud options here in Eagle's Nest?
They are what we usually use in the game. So we do have firearms for our characters. So as usual, you can decide to play with the firearms a little more and go into this sort of real-time tactics combat mode where you pause the game, try to react to enemies coming to you and shoot them, and then unpause the game and see what develops, pause the game again, and you'd have to manage the cooldowns and stuff like that. Or you can go into the full stealth mode where you're just sneaking around, backstabbing people, or even the ghost mode, which I don't know 100% always how it's possible. Like sometimes there's certain people that are rather painful to get out of the way. For example, if you shoot with the cannon at the gate, and getting the guys in front of the gate out of the way so to not kill them might be hard. But I'm pretty sure that the level is also almost completely ghostable, which usually is the case. This might be incredibly hard, but people do this. I've seen it happen in almost all of our missions, and I'm always baffled at how they actually manage to do that. But the different playstyles are at the core of our game, and it's very important to us to support it in every way. As you said, in the big way with stealth and guns, but also in every small enemy setup where we're like, okay, how can you approach this with this character, that character, from this side, from that side? There have to be at least 3 possible solutions for us to be happy, and then that means there usually are 10 or more that we didn't even think about.
This is kind of the sunsetting on this season pass. This is the final chapter of this section of the game, the DLC that you have for Desperados 3. And it is available on PC and consoles now, as I understand it.
Yes, that should be the case, hopefully.
After this, is there anything that comes next for Desperados 3?
So we are working on the final patch right now where we want to fix some things, and there might actually be some cool stuff in there as well. I'm not 100% sure what the final verdict is on if we can release that stuff or not. It's a little weird, but it's pretty cool, I think. So that is a little last gift, I guess, that would be added to Desperados, maybe. But the overall content, the new content missions, stuff like that, that is going to be done with the 3 DLCs that have been released now. And we are moving on to our next project now and focusing more on the next years of our lives and what people can expect then.
It's been an interesting year for strategy games. Like we've seen a lot of strategy come out this year, like almost an astounding amount. And even among that, like Desperados 3 has been kind of a standout. Like this is Commandos style gameplay, but like in a Wild West setting, and it's been like I was floored by it when I reviewed it. And it's just like I am curious, like what, as a retrospective, when you look back at like this journey through Desperados 3 and its DLC, what do you think like your favorite part of it has been?
So first of all, thanks. It means a lot that you like the game, and I agree. It has been a great year for strategy games. It's cool that they're coming back. The greatest moments of development, it's always hard to say because it's so many small things, and in the end, it's this big blob of stuff in your head. I'd have to think about. Well, I mean, the biggest moment, of course, always is the release. Like if you have this 1 week of reviewers getting the review scores out, and you're seeing what's the Metacritic gonna be, how's the Steam reviews gonna turn out, which is also a very, very important one, especially in the long run for you to see how the people actually love it. Like reviewers are one thing, they're very important, but it's only a small amount of people. And how does the vast amount of people who's gonna play it on Steam and etc. and PlayStation and Xbox gonna react to this? And that is very great to see. I think during development, some sort of breakthrough moments were when we actually were happy with the design of Isabel, one of our characters that is a little more out there in the mechanical side, and it's sort of a very new thing that we've added to the genre with mind controlling and connecting of enemies, which has been a very complex thing to get right from a balancing standpoint, and also from a just feedback and how we design the whole thing. And seeing how she works as a character and what she adds to the genre with a very new level of sandbox style, I think. Like you can do a lot of stuff with that character that nobody tells you that you can do. It's a lot of, like in the arcane immersive sim games, right, where you can just do crazy stuff with the game. And that is what I enjoy the most, seeing what people do with this now. The speedrunners, what they come up with. There's crazy things that they come up with. And yeah, so I think it's always after release. During the production, it's always it can be painful to not know what's going on and how things are gonna be received, and being a little anxious about how it's gonna turn out. So, yeah.
And so, like, we're sort of capping off on this, and this game is Desperados 3 is out now. It's out on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Windows, and Mac and Linux. And then also the DLC is available, whether you want to get it chapter by chapter or you want to get it all as a package. Is there anything else you'd like to add on top of that?
I want to thank you guys for the interview. I hope that people are going to see the game and play the game, and they enjoy the DLC and have fun with it as much as we had fun making it and watching people play it now. I think it's a pretty cool level, and we're happy that Desperados is done now. We can focus on the new things that are going to come up from Mini.
Are you able to talk about what you're working on next at all? Give us a little hint.
A little. I can say that it's in the same genre probably, but that's about it.
One of my questions I have for you, like I think it's really interesting because obviously you're a studio that's overseas, and I feel that Europe really takes they really like the Western genre in general, like more so than even American, because I don't think people realize as you guys really you didn't get to experience that. You know what I mean? That was a Western thing, it was a North American thing, and how did that play into like your design or your characters? I mean, did you guys go and watch old Western movies, that kind of stuff?
Definitely. So, of course, we had the old Desperados games to look into, and they were heavily influenced by all that, but the biggest challenge for us in the Western was that the Western genre has changed a lot over the years. It has come from different themes where it used to be more about, people interacting with each other. And now modern Westerns are very much about man versus nature themes a lot of the times, like The Revenant and stuff like that. Or True Grit. And we looked at all this and we tried to figure out what is our version of the Western going to be, especially with the Desperados background. And Desperados is a more cheesy Italo-Western type of thing. It's very fun, but also gritty in some ways. And we took that, we combined it with the we think at least the visuals more of the newer Westerns, like different color palettes. It's not only desert. there's different things going on there. So we had to look a lot into that. The good thing, I think, that makes it easier for us from Europe to do this than it would have been. It's not like a completely historical correct recreation of the West or something. It's fantastic romantic Western stuff, so there is a little freedom there, and we can take a lot of inspiration from movies, books, etc., and don't have to nail everything perfectly with how that type of asset would look like in the real West, because it doesn't really matter in our time, though we take these things seriously. But yeah, it was fun researching all that, and it always is with something new. When we made Shadow Tactics, before that we had to research Edo Japan, which is a lot harder to do than Westerns.
Like, yeah, I've always felt that sort of lightheartedness was the strength of this, and that particularly comes through to me like in the dialogue of this game. Like, I think one of my standout missions of this entire game was the ranch mission where Doc and the big guy,
Trevor,
Hector. And Hector. They are infiltrating this raid, and they have an ongoing competition between who can take out the most bandits. And the dialogue actually changes as they keep racking up kills between the two of them, and adapts to whoever wins the competition. And I just thought that was like the most interesting little bit of this game, was just like how much dialogue there was, how much banter there is, and like how it adapts to the situations as you play.
Yeah, we put a lot of effort into that. Like, we know that the plot in our games, for us, it's not the focus. Like, the plot is there and it's going to be cool, but the characters are what's important to us, because the characters are what people spend their time with, and the relationship between these characters, that's important. Make them fun, make them believable, make them likable. And this is why we put a lot of effort into that. And the ranch mission is a good example for that, where we have all these small quirks where Hector, he's miscounting sometimes, and Doc he's a very correct guy, so he's saying, well, wait a minute, this isn't correct, you're not at 13, you're at 10, and stuff like that. And the banter going along with that, it's very fun. We also put a lot of stuff in that I didn't see much in other RTS yet, and I hope that maybe people will adapt it more, is we try to experiment a lot with, if you select a unit or you make a character move somewhere, they always have these barks like, yes sir, I'm gonna do that, or stuff like that. These generic things you hear all the time. And we try to, like, we have a lot of them that are made for specific locations. So they are not gonna say the same thing in all missions. They're gonna react differently, and sometimes their mood might be different. So they might be in a bad mood from the plot in a mission, and then their complete bark set is gonna be swapped for something where they're in a bad mood. And they hardly talk maybe, or they're just grunting around. It depends on the character. But these sort of things, or we have one where they're hungover, which is one of my favorite missions. And in that mission, they're like, oh, my head, and stuff like that if you select them. And I think it's another area where we can show the characters and the dialogue in it. And it's great to hear, like, our writer, Hambo, it's actually just one guy who writes the game, and he did a phenomenal job, as usual. It's very good.
And it's kind of a tradition here at Shacknews. We have a certain console that is maybe one of our favorites, and it happens to be the one that Desperados isn't on. We do love our Nintendo Switch here at Shacknews, and I do have to ask, is there ever a chance of this game maybe making its way over to the Nintendo Switch?
So we love the Switch as well, especially our boss. He's a big fan. I don't think it's gonna work. Like, we have been trying this for quite some time. It's something that's always coming up again. Sometimes THQ is like, well, we could have these people look into it. Maybe they can make a port. The thing is, the game is very demanding, and especially the CPU, which is a big problem for the normal consoles already. Like, getting this game running, which sometimes you might not believe it because it's not Red Dead or something, right? I mean, there's games like that where you're like, well, how can this not run? And Red Dead is running. We're a smaller team, so we don't have, they probably have 5 times the amount of engineers that our whole team is big. So I don't think that it's gonna happen. I hope that it might at some point happen. We're always reevaluating it if something new comes up, but the game just doesn't really run. Maybe if there's a new version of Switch that is a bit more powerful, it's something that we can look into again. I'm not quite sure if they're currently looking to something, but not in the near future, sadly.
I think that's interesting because most developer studios have issues with either how memory is allocated or the GPU, but like yours specifically was CPU based, and I don't feel people talk about that enough because you could have a RTX 380, but if you have an Intel i2, everything's going to still run like garbage. You still need a decent CPU to do tasks. It's all of it's all part of the same system.
Yeah, and it always depends on where your bottlenecks are. And for us, it's a lot of, because we have all this AI on the whole map, like as we have missions where you're for 2 to 3 hours maybe. And of course, maybe you could solve things differently. I'm not a technical engineer, but it's important that everything stays in sync. It's important that the guy on the top left, even though it might not seem like that, is still in sync with the guy on the bottom right of the map, because you can have a character on the top left and you can have a character on the top right. Like the whole game needs to run at all times. And the AI is dumbed down if it's not on screen, of course, but it still needs to have the same timings. It needs to be able to detect stuff. And there's a lot of stuff running on the CPU at all times. And this is what makes it so difficult. And then we have a feature like quick save, where in our game, as we said, it's important that it's actually a quick save and it's not taking 1 minute. Because if you play AAA games, usually there's no quick save. There's a long save and a long load, but they're called something, I don't know. Because they don't need it as much. It's not part of the core loop, so that's fine. But for us, if you would have to wait 1 minute to reload in our game, it's like going to be the most frustrating experience ever.
Well, cloud-based gaming is like becoming a thing. Maybe we have cloud-based gaming on the Switch, and then Desperados 3 can be on it that way.
Maybe. Let's hope so.
Fingers crossed for Switch Pro. Yeah, and I didn't even think about that, but like, that is maybe the fastest quick save, quick load system I've ever seen in a game. It's just like you tap a button and it puts everything right back where it was when you last saved. I didn't think about that, but like these missions are sprawling and there's so many things happening in them and so many characters like moving around in real time. And so to just hit that button and have it all go back to the way it was in almost literally seconds, that is quite impressive.
It's like our technical team, like the programmers and devs, they have done an exemplary job on that. In Shadow Tactics already, and it's a very complex thing. Like it defines everything in our game is sort of defined by the save system, because everything needs to run and to save and load quickly, especially on consoles. Like on PC, it's not that hard to get it fast enough, but on the old consoles, like they are years old, so it's almost 10 years now, I think, something like that. Getting a quick save there that takes like 3 to 4 seconds max, and the load especially as well, which is just as important. That took a lot of optimization work. Like the game got delayed quite a bit, and that is one of the reasons.
Well, you knocked it out of the park when it finally landed. That is easily one of my favorite things about it. Is just like how easy it is to access that system, and how it kind of makes a game and makes the difficulty adaptable to you, because you can choose how much or how little you want to save at any given time, and being able to refer back to a spot that you just made literally seconds ago with ease is an incredible cushion in an otherwise very difficult game.
I think it also rewards experimentation, which is what we like a lot about it. Like, if it's so fast, you can actually be like, well, maybe I'm just going to try this other thing right now. Like, you don't always have to do the thing that you know works, because retrying is 5 seconds away and not a minute. And it makes a lot, I think, in the mental space of the player, where they can just be like, yeah, this is a game about experimenting. It's fine. I can do that. And we try to encourage that in quick, like, tooltips and stuff like that.
There were absolutely times where I wanted to blow things up and alert everybody to my presence, just so I could see what it looks like when I blow things up. Because the game is beautiful and it's worth seeing those interactions with the environment. But yeah, like it is. Experimentation is absolutely a huge part of this. Well, thank you so much, Moritz, for your time. Is there anything else you want to add on top of it before we close it out?
No, I think what we did before, I'm good. Later I'm gonna be like, oh shit, I should have said that, but yeah, no, I'm.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on capping off on this game. Fingers crossed for Nintendo Switch Pro or cloud gaming at some point, and we can't wait to see what Mimi comes out with next. This has been an absolutely awesome journey through Desperados 3, and you have absolutely, I think, earned people's attention for whatever you guys have up your sleeve coming down the line.